Liam lived on a quiet planet called Velis 3. It was a peaceful colony, far away from the big cities and space. He had built a small house at the edge of a forest where he lived with his 10-year-old daughter. Nara, she was smart and curious, always asking questions and drawing strange animals in her sketchbook. Liam loved her more than anything. She was all he had every evening. They would sit by the window and watch the sky turn gold. Nara would talk about flying ships and stars, and Liam would smile and listen. He had once worked as an engineer on big space stations, but he left all that behind when Nara's mother died. Now, all that mattered was raising her safely one night. Something strange happened as Liam came home from the town market with fresh supplies. He called Nara, but there was no answer. He checked her room. It was empty. Her sketchbook lay on the bed, and her favorite toy, a wooden owl, was on the floor. The window was open, though Nara never opened it because she was afraid of bugs. Liam's heart began to beat fast. He searched the whole house, the backyard, the nearby trees, but she was gone. He rushed back inside and activated the house security system. A small drone hovered up and played the last recorded footage. Liam watched as Nara sat on her bed, drawing quietly. Then the screen flickered. Static. After that, the room was empty. Only strange marks on the floor remained, like something had burned small circles into the wood. Liam replayed the footage again and again. But every time the same thing happened. A flicker, and then she was gone. And contacted the local patrol, but they arrived late. The officer looked at the footage and said it could be a glitch. They promised to search the area, but Liam could see they were not taking it seriously. Children sometimes wandered off, they said. Maybe she went to a friend's house. Maybe she was hiding, but Liam knew Nara. She never ran away. She never left the house alone, especially not at night. Next day, Liam searched on his own. He walked for miles, calling her name. He checked every place she liked to visit. The lake, the old stone hill, the path behind the garden where she collected shiny rocks. There was no sign of her who returned home that evening, exhausted and afraid. The sky was dark, and the house felt empty. He sat in her room, holding the small owl toy. That's when he noticed something strange under her bed. It was a tiny metal shard, glowing faintly. He picked it up carefully. It was warm and hummed softly in his hand. It looked like a piece of advanced tech, nothing like the tools he used in the colony. He placed it on his desk and scanned it with his old engineering tablet. The results made no sense. The material was unknown. The energy signature was not from any known human source. Mean had taken Nara, and they had used technology far beyond what existed on Velis 3. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk, studying the shard. He connected it to his tablet again, trying to draw more data. After a few minutes, something strange happened. A set of coordinates appeared on the screen. It was a location in deep space, far beyond any trade route. Liam stared at the numbers. He knew what it meant. This was not just a kidnapping. Someone had taken Nara off-world. Spent the next morning preparing. He opened the old storage shed behind his house and pulled off the tarp. From his ship, it was a cargo vessel he had fixed over the years. Not pretty, but it still worked. He called it a burn side. He cleaned the controls, checked the fuel cells, and updated the nav system. It would take time, but he could reach the coordinates while he worked. A shadow moved near the trees. A cloaked figure stood there, watching silently. Liam saw it from the corner of his eye and rushed out with a light in hand, but the figure was already walking away. Liam shouted, asking if they had seen a girl. The figure stopped, turned slightly, then tossed a small metal object toward him. It landed in the dirt. Liam picked it up. It was another shard, just like the one he had found in Nara's room. The stranger was gone. No, there was no doubt. Someone was leaving him a trail. They wanted him to follow. By nightfall, Liam had loaded the ship with supplies, tools, water, food, and one picture of Nara smiling with her missing front teeth. He placed it beside the control screen before leaving. He stood in Nara's room one last time. Her drawings were still on the wall. Her favorite pillow was on the chair. Liam promised out loud, "I'm coming for you." As the ship lifted into the sky, the house grew smaller behind him. Velos 3 faded into the distance. Liam stared into the stars. Gripping the controls tightly, did not know who had taken his daughter or why. But he would find out. He would cross the stars if he had to, and he would not stop until she was safe in his arms again. What he did not know was that his journey would not only change his life, but also the fate of someone else, someone waiting in the dark, just like Nara. A girl with eyes not human, and a heart that would soon call him family. Liam's ship, Ember, flew through deep space. It shook slightly with every jump, but it held together. He had repaired the engines, reinforced the shields, and connected an old tracking system to follow the strange coordinates he found from. The Shardist's eyes were tired, but he stayed awake every hour. He checked the signals and scanned the route. Space was wide and silent, filled with stars and blackness. But Liam's heart was loud. His thoughts were on Nara. He remembered how she once asked if stars could sing. He wished he could hear her voice now. First stop was a long-abandoned cargo route. Years ago, traders used it to carry supplies between colonies. Now it was empty. But Liam's scanner picked up something unusual. A small energy ripple was floating in space ahead. Like a thin crack in the air slowed Ember and looked closer. The ripple grew brighter. Suddenly, it formed into a perfect circle. A warp Gatelium's breath caught in his throat. Warp gates were old tech, made by a race that vanished long ago. Only a few still worked, and no one knew how to build new ones. If this gate was active, someone powerful was using it. I hesitated, but the coordinates pointed straight into it. He gripped the controls, took a deep breath, and flew forward. The ship passed through with a flash. For a moment, everything went dark. Then the stars changed. Liam had arrived in a new system, one that was not marked on any map before he could scan the area. Alarms screamed on his screen. Unidentified objects were moving fast. For metal drones surrounded the ship. They looked like floating spiders, with long legs and glowing red eyes. One of them fired a warning shot across the hull. Liam pushed Ember into a spin and dove downward. The drones followed. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. He activated the side thrusters, released decoy flares, and launched a pulse wave. The drones backed off. The others stayed close. Liam opened a hidden panel and activated a tool he built long ago, a burst EMP launcher. It had one charge only. He aimed carefully and fired a wave of blue light, spread in all directions. The two closest drones sparked and froze in place. The others turned and vanished into the stars. Liam's hands shook. He had survived the ambush, but it was clear now someone did not want him to follow the trail. Check the damage. Ember had lost a few outer panels, but the core systems were fine. He took a slow breath and returned to scanning. That was when a broken signal came through. A voice, low and full of static, whispered a few words. Help, taken girl. Not alone. Liam leaned forward. He boosted the signal and played it again. Help. They took the girl. She's not the only one. The message cut off. Liam stared at the screen. The voice was not Nara's, but the message was clear. Someone knew about her. Someone else had been taken to follow the signal to its source. It led to a small moon orbiting a blue gas giant. The moon looked empty from space, with dark land and no signs of life. But the signal came from beneath the surface. He landed the ship near a rocky canyon and stepped outside. The air was thin but breathable. He carried a light pack, a scanner, and a small shock pistol for defense. The signal led him to a hidden door. In the ground, it was half buried under stones, covered with dust. Liam cleared the entrance and pressed the side panel. Nothing happened. He opened his bag and used a power cell to force it open. The door slid aside with a low hiss. Inside was a long tunnel, lit by dim blue lights. Liam moved slowly, every step echoing around him. Old crates, wires, and machines lay broken along the walls. The place had not been used in a long time, but someone had been here recently. At the end of the tunnel was a large room. In the center stood a glowing tube. Inside was a girl, but it wasn't. Narash was younger, maybe 8 years old. Her skin was pale blue. Her hair floated like smoke inside the tube. Her eyes were closed, and strange symbols glowed on her arms. She looked peaceful, but Liam stepped closer. A small control screen blinked beside the tube. He touched it and saw words in an unknown language. But one part was clear: specimen to 112, energy stable, transfer pending. He looked at the girl again. Who was she? Why was she here? And why did the signal lead him to her? Before he could do more, the control screen flashed red. An alarm rang out. Heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnel. Someone was coming. Liam acted fast. He opened the control panel and pulled out the power lines. The tube hissed and began to open. The girl fell forward into his arms. She was light and cold, but breathing, her eyes opened slowly. They were silver and full of fear. She looked at Liam, confused and weak. It's okay, Liam said gently. I've got you. You're safe now. She whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Then, as the footsteps grew louder, she pointed toward the exit. Liam carried her and moved through the tunnel, dodging behind crates as 3 armored figures entered from the other side. They shouted, but Liam didn't stop. He reached the outside and raced to the ship, placed the girl gently in a seat, and fired the engines. Ember lifted off just as the attackers reached the canyon. They escaped into the skies. The moon grew smaller behind them. The girl turned to Liam. She touched her head and then his. And a soft feeling passed between them. A picture formed in Liam's mind, images of Nara, locked in a lab, reaching out for help. Liam's hands tightened on the controls. He looked at the girl beside him. She was not his daughter, but she was a victim too. Someone had taken her just like they had taken Narand. Now, they were in this together. Liam guided Ember into quiet space, far from any planets or patrol routes. The girl sat in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in a soft blanket. Her head rested against the chair, and her silver eyes blinked slowly. She still looked tired, but her breathing was calm now. Liam glanced at her often. She was clearly not human, but there was something gentle in her presence. Her pale blue skin and glowing symbols gave her a strange beauty, but it was the sadness in her eyes that caught his heart. She had been through something terrible. Handed her a bottle of water and a protein bar. She stared at them for a moment, then nodded in thanks. She took small sips, holding the bottle carefully. Her fingers shook. What's your name, Liam? Asked soft-lived girl. Looked at him, then touched her chest and said, Tira. Liam repeated it. Tira. I'm Liam. She pointed at herself again. Tira. Then she pointed at him. Liam. She was learning fast. Liam wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to push her. She had just escaped from a place that locked her in a glowing tube. She needed time instead. He turned his focus to the files he had pulled from the lab's control screen. Most of the data was in a strange language, but he managed to find something useful. There was a chart with dates and numbers. A few images showed other children, some human, some not. Most were in stasis tubes. Like Tira's own image made Liam's hands freeze. It was Nara. Her hair was messy, her eyes closed. She looked thin and pale, but she was alive. The file had her name. Nara Gray, sample 334, energy match, partial. He didn't understand what it meant, but it was enough. She had been here. They had taken her because of something inside her, something they were testing. And Tira might know more. Liam turned back to her. Nara, he said, showing her the picture. Tira leaned forward. Her eyes widened. She touched the screen gently, then closed her eyes. A faint glow moved around her fingers. Images filled Liam's mind, flashes of places, voices. Payne saw a white room with machines. He saw Nara lying on a table. He saw people in suits speaking in a cold voice. And he saw Tira in another room, watching through glass. When the vision ended, Liam stepped back, breathing hard. She's still alive, he whispered. You saw her? Tira nodded. Yes, taken to big place. Far. Do you know where? Tira pointed at the navigation screen. Then she drew a circle with her finger and tapped a point inside it. Liam marked the coordinate. Place was far across the sector. It was close to a system called Dornus Prime, known for its factories and trade stations. If they took Nara there, it wouldn't be easy to get her out. But Liam had no choice. He set the new course and activated the jump drive. It would take hours to arrive. While the ship traveled, Liam showed Tira how to use the food dispenser, the bed, and the shower unit. She seemed quiet, but watched everything with sharp eyes at her, while Liam rested on the floor with a blanket. Tara sat beside him and drew shapes with her fingers in the air. Light followed her movements, like stars forming in the dark. She made the shape of a bird, then a sun, then something that looked like a flower. Liam watched quiet. Lyle had never seen power like hers. It wasn't loud or dangerous. It was soft and beautiful. What are you? He asked. Kinlight. Tara looked at him, then raised both hands to her chest. She said something in her own language, then added one word he understood. Heart. Liam didn't know if that was the name of her people or her power, but he nodded. It felt right. The ship's warning beep woke them both. Liam moved to the control seat and checked the readings. Something was wrong. A small moon had pulled their ship off course. Gravity was strong, and the engines were struggling. He tried to steer away, but the ship began to shake. Tara held onto the chair, her eyes wide. It's okay, Liam said. I can land it with great effort. He guided Ember toward a flat surface on the moon. The ship touched down with a loud thud, sliding slightly before stopping. Smoke rose from the rear engine. Liam checked the system. One thruster had failed. It would need repair before they could leave. He looked out the window. The moon was cold and gray. Tall rocks surrounded the ship. The sky above was full of stars, but everything below was silent. Liam grabbed his tools and stepped outside. Tara followed him, curious but careful. She looked around with wide eyes. They found a safe spot near the ship and set up a small heat lamp. Liam opened the engine panel and began work. Tara sat nearby, drawing in the dust with a stick. After an hour, Liam took a break. He sat beside her and looked at her drawing. It showed a tall tree, a small girl, and a man standing next to her. Above them were stars. Is that you? Liam asked, pointing at the girl. Tara nodded. Then she pointed at the man and said, Liam. He smiled suddenly. Her hand stiffened. She stood up and looked toward the rocks. Liam followed her gaze. Something moved in the shadows. A flicker of light. A sound of metal scraping against stone. Grabbed his small shock pistol and stood in front of Tara. 3 figures stepped into the open. They wore black armor and had weapons in hand. One of them spoke into a device, likely calling for backup. They had found them. Liam looked at Tara. Stay behind me, but Tara stepped forward. She raised her hands slowly. Light shimmered between her fingers. The ground beneath the soldiers shook slightly. Loud lead soldier shouted and aimed his weapon before he could fire. A wave of soft energy pulsed from Tara's hands. It wasn't violent. It was like wind and light together. The soldiers staggered, dropped their weapons, and fell to their knees. Dazed, Liam stared in disbelief. Tara turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. They follow, she said. More will come. Liam understood. They had to fix the ship and leave before others arrived. Move quickly, hands steady now. With Tara's help, the thruster was repaired in time. Ember lifted off just as more ships appeared on the horizon in the sky. Above the silent moon, Liam looked at Tara. You saved us. He said. Tara looked at him with a calm face. We saved each other, and the journey to Dornus Prime began. Liam pushed Ember's engines as hard as they could go. The ship flew through open space, heading toward Dornus Prime. Behind them, two patrol ships were chasing, but Liam stayed calm. He knew how to fly through asteroid fields, old mining paths, and shortcut lanes that didn't appear on public maps. Tara sat beside him, her hands gripping the seat. Her silver eyes scanned the screens. She was quiet, but alert. She had saved them once already. Liam hoped she wouldn't need to do it again. Flipped a switch and turned into a thick cloud of dust from an old mining station. The ship went dark, hiding its signal. The patrols passed by. Unable to find them, Liam let out a breath. We're clear. For now. Tara leaned back and closed her eyes. She was tired. Her energy powers drained her quickly, and she needed rest. Liam handed her a warm drink and nodded toward the back room. Go rest. I'll watch. Tara nodded and left. Liam checked the map. Dornus Prime was still a few hours away. It was a large industrial world, known for its factories, shipyards, and trade markets. But beneath all that, people whispered about secret deals and hidden labs. a place where no one asked questions. He believed Nara was there to replay the data from the last lab. One part showed transport logs. Nara's name was on the list, marked with the words, Core Lab Transfer Complete. Liam didn't know what the Core Lab was, but it had to be near the center of Dornus Prime. That would make things harder. The cities were guarded, and outsiders were watched still. He had come too far to turn back when they finally arrived in orbit. Liam used a fake ID code he had built long ago. The port security let them land at Dock 49, near the outer district. It was busy and loud, full of cargo ships, traders. An old machinist. Liam wore a dark coat and carried a small bag of tools. Tira wore a hood and stayed close to him. They walked through the crowd. Anonymous asked around quietly, using code words and old contacts. A man named Bren, who ran a scrapyard, gave him the first clue. There's a lab near the steel mines. Bren whispered, people go in, but not many come out. No signs, no names. Just guards and silence. Liam nodded and left a small energy. Sell his payment that night. They reached the edge of the steel mines. Smoke rose from tall chimneys, and red lights blinked through the fog. The lab was hidden behind large metal walls, with drones flying above and guards at every gate. Liam studied the pattern. The drones circled every 6 minutes. The guards changed. Shifts every 4 hours. He waited until the change began, then he moved. Tira followed closely. Her steps were silent, her presence calm. They slipped through a side tunnel and climbed a maintenance ladder. At the top, Liam used a small EMP device to disable the gate for 30 seconds. They ran through and hid behind storage credits inside. The lab was cold and clean. The walls were white, the floor shiny, machines hummed, and screens blinked softly. They passed rows of rooms, each with sealed doors, and ID panels. Liam found a terminal and plugged in a data stick. He searched the system, looking for Nara's name. After a few tries, he found it. Nara Gray Room B12 Test Subject Energy. Pattern similarity, 67%. His hands clenched, but he stayed focused. He copied the location and turned to leave. Suddenly, an alarm blared. The screen turned red. Footsteps echoed in the halls. We have to go, Liam said quickly, but Tira didn't move. Her eyes were closed, her hands glowing faintly. Liam grabbed her arm. Tira. Now she opened her eyes. I saw her. She's afraid, but she's waiting. Liam nodded. Then let's go get her. They ran down the hallway, turning corners, dodging workers and guards. Sirens rang, and doors locked. Behind them, Liam used his tools to cut through a panel and open a side door. Finally, they reached room B1. To the door was locked with a scanner. Tira stepped forward and placed her hand on it. Light burst from her fingers, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the room was dark. In the center was a stasis bed, covered with glass. A small figure lay inside. Breathing slowly, Nara, Liam whispered. Ed rushed forward and opened the cover. The air hissed, and the machine powered down. Nara's eyes blinked slowly. Her lips moved. Dad, I'm here, Liam said, lifting her gently. I've got you. Nara wrapped her arms around him weakly. I knew you'd come. Tara stepped forward. Nara looked at her with wide eyes. She smiled. Is she your friend? Liam nodded. She's family now. Before they could leave, the door burst open. 5 guards stood there with weapons. Red Lime covered Nara and held her close. Tira stepped forward again. Her hands rose, and the room filled with light, but this time, the power was different, stronger, brighter. Waves of energy swept through the room, knocking the guards back. The lights above shattered, and the machines sparked run. Tira said they moved quickly, racing through the halls. The whole lab shook as Tira's energy surged through the building. Doors flew open. Alarms failed. Drones fell from the sky. They reached the outside and ran through the fog. The gate they entered through was still broken. Ember waited nearby. Hidden behind old supply crates, Liam opened the hatch, and they climbed in. He placed Nara in the seat and started. The engine's guards shouted in the distance. But it was till the timber rose into the sky and flew into the stars inside the ship. Nara leaned against her father. Tira sat across from them, breathing slowly. Her energy dim, but calmly. Liam looked at both of them. I swear, he said, I'll keep you both safe, Nara smiled. Tira did too, but deep in space. Far from Dorna's prime, someone was watching. The files Liam stole held more than just names. They held secrets. Dangerous ones, and someone wanted them back. Liam flew Ember into the outer rim of the next system. The ship was quiet except for the low hum of its engines. Nara was asleep in the back room. Wrapped in a blanket, she needed rest. Her face looked tired, but peaceful. Tira sat nearby, watching. Over her like a silent guard, Liam sat in the cockpit, checking the files he had stolen from the lab. His eyes scanned the strange codes, images, and maps. He had unlocked part of the system, but most of it was still in an alien language. Some parts showed test results. Others had pictures of children in stasis pods, human and alien both tapped. On one file, it was marked in red letters, Archive, failed sample. As the images broke his heart. Many children didn't survive the experiments. They were taken from different planets, used for energy tests, and then marked as failures. Liam closed the file and looked at the sleeping form of his daughter. She had come close to joining those names. Tira walked over and sat beside him. She pointed at the screen and said, "They collect us, use our light, mix it, try to make new." Kind Liam nodded slowly. "You mean they are testing your power and mixing it with humans like Nara?" Tira looked sad. "They want control, not care." Liam leaned back. He stared out into space. "We need to stop them, not just for Nara, but for the others too." He opened another map inside the files. There was a hidden section deep under Dorna's prime. The map showed a large underground station below the factories. It was not listed on any public record. No doors, no gates. Just a quiet label, Facility Theta, Core Storage. A note beside it said, "Preserve subjects, long-term holding, priority access only." Liam's hands gripped the seat. He turned to Tira. "I think there are more children down there, still alive. We have to go back." Tira blinked. "Danger? Many guards. No light, I know," Liam said. "But we have to try." Nara woke a few hours later. She sat up slowly and looked around. Her voice was soft. "Are we safe?" Liam smiled and knelt beside her. "We're together now. That's all that matters." Nara looked at Tira and reached out her hand. Tira took it gently. In that moment, no words were needed. They were already bonded by what they had been through. Liam explained the plan. Nara listened carefully. "You're going back." She escaped. Liam nodded. "Yes, but not for long. I need to see who else is trapped. I want to help." Nara said, "You've done enough," Liam replied. "You need to rest, but what if someone helped me the same way?" Nara Liam paused. Then he smiled. "All right, but only if you stay close to Tira." The plan was simple. They would land far from the city and move underground through the old sewer tunnels that fed into the old factories. From there, Liam would access the hidden path to Facility Theta. It was risky, but the only way. The next night, they began and landed in a quiet canyon. The air was heavy with smoke, but the stars above gave enough light. Liam led the way, carrying his tools and scanner. Tira held Nara's hand as they moved through the narrow tunnels. Rats and broken machines filled the path, but they kept moving. After an hour, Liam found a small door in the wall. It was marked with faded symbols. He used his tools to unlock it. Beyond the door, the air was colder. The walls were smooth and made of dark metal. Lights pulsed faintly from deep below. They had reached Facility Theta. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No voices. No footsteps. Just the soft hum of mashness. Liam crept through the halls, hiding behind crates and shadows. Tira moved like wind beside him. Nara followed carefully. Her eyes wide, but bravely reached the central chamber. What they saw made them freeze. Rows of glass tubes filled the room. Inside each one was a child, some human, some alien, some unlike anything Liam had seen. They were all asleep, floating in strange light. A large machine stood in the center. It blinked and clicked, connected to the tubes by wires and glowing cables. Tira placed her hand on one of the tubes, her face filled with sadness. Still alive, but fading. Liam opened his scanner. He searched the system. The tubes were locked by a control code. If he could break it, he could open them all. But if he made one mistake, The system could shut everything down, took a deep breath, and Beganara sat beside Tira, watching her draw shapes in the air. The light from Tira's fingers floated above them like stars suddenly. A sharp sound echoed through the room. A door opened behind them. 3 guards stepped in. Liam froze. The system was still unlocking. He couldn't stop. No. Tira stepped forward. Her eyes glowed softly. One of the guards shouted. They raised their weapons. Tira didn't move. Her arms rose slowly. A wave of soft light pushed forward like a silent wind. The guards dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Dazed and confusedly impressed, the final key system unlocked. The glass tubes opened one by one. The children inside began to wake. Some cried. Some blinked slowly. Others looked around. In silence, Tira moved among them, touching their hands. Calming them, Nara gave water and comfortably guided the older children toward the tunnel. This way, stay quiet, follow the light. More alarms began to ring. The facility knew someone was inside. They had to move fast, and by one, they escaped through the tunnel. The children followed in lines, silent but full of hope. Liam stayed. At the end, guiding the last few out, Tira stood beside him, her light helping them see through the dark as they reached the surface. Liam looked back one last time. Facility Theta was still standing, but no longer hidden. Turned toward the sky, toward Ember, where a new journey was waiting. Liam stood beside Ember, watching as the rescued children climbed into the ship one by one. Their eyes were tired, some of them still shook with fear. Others looked around with quiet curiosity. Nara helped a younger girl find a seat and gave her a warm blanket. Tira walked among the group, placing a hand on each child's shoulder. Her presence gave them calm inside the ship. Liam adjusted the systems to carry the extra weight. The engines could handle it, but they would need to rest soon. He looked at the stars above, knowing that time was running out. Someone would come. For them, someone powerful. Tira walked over to him. They will chase, she said softly. I know. Liam replied, but we'll be ready. He showed her the files he had taken from the hidden lab. They held names, locations, transport logs, and energy test results. One section revealed something important. A place called Tover's Core, located at the heart of a rich star system. It was listed as the final testing center. The files also showed a coded message. Subject 330 scheduled for final phase. Full energy fusion in 7 cycles. Success may trigger universal program. Liam's hands tightened. Subject 330 was Nara. Even after escaping, she was still part of their plan. The people behind this would not stop. Tira studied the message. They want to use her light, make it stronger, make it theirs. Liam looked at his daughter through the window. Then we stop them before they do. Later that night, while the children slept inside Ember, Liam worked under the stars. He opened his toolbox and began building a device using parts from the stolen lab and his old engineering kit. It was a pulse transmitter, shaped like a small orb. If placed in the right spot, it could shut down systems for Molestia. Watched quietly. What is it? A gift for our enemies, Liam said. If we get to Tovers, I want a way to strike back. Tira sat beside him. You fight like a father. That's all I know how to be now. He said. When the children woke the next morning, Liam gave them a warm meal and explained the plan. We're heading to a safe place first, a quiet moon near Tovers. From there, we'll decide our next move. He let Nara sleep in the pilot's chair while he flew the ship. Her head rested on a soft pillow, her small hand holding onto the edge of his jacket. Tira sat beside them, her eyes focused on the stars ahead as they flew. Liam began noticing signals in the distance, military codes, patrol ships. Something big was happening near Tovrisa. A few hours later, Ember reached a hidden moon called Heaven. It was covered in thick trees and blue lakes. Liam landed the ship near an old outpost. The place was quiet, with broken buildings and moss-covered walls. This will keep us hidden for a while. Liam said to set up shelters outside the ship. The children stretched their legs, played with sticks, and looked at birds they had never seen before. For a moment, it almost felt normal, but Liam knew peace would not last that night. While everyone slept, Liam studied the maps of Tover's Core. The place was a floating city above a burning planet, protected by shield towers and guarded by drones. It was built like a fortress. Getting it would be almost impossible. Tira sat beside him. You cannot go alone, I have to. Liam said, they'll be looking for a ship, not one man walking. Through the dark you won't come back if you go like that. Liam looked at her. If I don't stop them, they'll find us again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But they won't stop. I have to end it now. Tira placed her hand on his. Then let me help. He nodded. Together, they made a plan. Liam would take the pulse transmitter and enter the city through the service tunnels beneath the power grid. Tira would stay on Haven with the children, protecting them if anything went wrong before dawn. Liam hugged Nara tightly. I'll come back, he whispered. You always do. She's safe. And he left. Trip to Tovers took only 2 hours, but every minute felt heavy. Liam landed Ember far from the city and used a small pod to glide down into the tunnels. He moved through the shadows, avoiding cameras and sensors inside the city. Everything was bright and cold. Machines buzzed. Drones flew silently through the halls. Liam followed the map to the main core where the energy systems were held. If he placed the pulse transmitter there, it would shut down power across the entire station. Found the control room and placed the device near the reactor. He had 10 minutes to leave before it activated. As he turned to leave, a voice echoed through the hall. You again? The voice said. Liam turned slowly. A tall man in a silver coat stood near the door. His eyes were sharp, his voice calm. You stole our data, freed our samples, and now you think you can stop the future you call this future? Liam asked, taking children, turning them into tools? We are saving the galaxy, the man said. We are building a new kind of life, one that will survive anything. War, hunger, death. Your daughter's power can light 1,000 worlds. She's not your light, Liam said. She's my daughter, and I'm taking her out of your shadow. The man raised a weapon. Then die with your pride. But before he could fire, the pulse device activated. A loud hum filled the room. Lights blinked. The floor shook. The weapon in the man's hand dropped to the ground. Liam ran. Alarms blared across the city. Drones crashed. Doors opened at random. Workers ran in confusion. Liam moved through the chaos, heading for the escape pod he had hidden earlier. He reached it just as the station's outer shell began to crack. Fire shot from the reactors. The pod launched into the sky, flying away from the burning light of Tover's core. Back on Haven, Tira watched the sky. A streak of light appeared. She smiled. He's coming back, she told Nara. Nara ran to the clearing with the others. Moments later, the pod landed softly. Liam stepped out, tired but alive. Nara ran into his arms. Tira stood beside them, her hand on his shoulder. The sky above was quiet again. Liam looked at the stars. He had made a stand, not just as a fighter, but as a father, and he was not alone anymore. Liam stepped out of the pod, his boots touching the soft grass of Haven. The cold night air brushed his face, and for a moment, he looked up at the stars with quiet relief. He was back where he had left the children, and Tira, safe for now. Nara ran toward him, her small arms open wide. Liam caught her gently, holding her close. She smelled faintly of the lab, but the fear in her eyes had faded. She was alive, and that was all that mattered. Tira waited nearby, her silver eyes shining softly in the moonlight. She smiled at Liam, then at Nara. Together, they were family now, different, but united inside Ember. The children stirred, waking from their restless sleep. Liam gathered them one by one, offering food, warm blankets, and kind words. They were still weak, but their spirits were stronger. We have a chance now, Liam said, a chance to live free. Days passed slowly. Liam repaired Ember's systems, making sure the ship could carry them far away from danger. Tira taught the children how to protect themselves with her gentle powers, showing them how light could heal and shield. Nara stayed close to her father, learning to trust again. Sometimes she would ask Liam questions about the stars, the past, and their future. Liam answered with patience, telling stories of hope and courage. In the evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Liam and Tira stood outside Ember, watching the sky turn orange and purple. The children played nearby, laughing. For the first time in weeks, I was afraid we would never find peace, Liam said quietly. Tira nodded. But peace is something we make, not something we wait for. Suddenly, The ship's alarm sounded. Liam's heart raced. He rushed inside and checked the controls. A small fleet of ships was approaching fast. They found us, Liam said grimly. Tira stood beside him, her hands glowing with soft light. We can fight. Together, Liam nodded. We don't have a choice. The children gathered in the ship's safe room, protected by Tira's light. Liam prepared the ship's defenses, loading weapons and setting shields to maximum. Enemy ships fired first. Bright blasts lit up the dark sky. Ember shook under the attack, but Liam kept control. He fired back, aiming carefully to avoid hitting. The children. Tira's light spread outside the ship like a shield, blocking several attacks. She moved gracefully, her power a calm force against the storm. The battle was fierce but brief. The enemy ships, surprised by Ember's defense, began to retreat. Liam chased them for a short distance, warning them not to return when the sky cleared. Liam looked at Tira and smiled. We did it. We're still here. Tira smiled back. Because we fight together. The next day, Liam made an important decision. They could not stay on Haven forever. They needed a real home, a place where the children could grow, learn, and be free from fearing the stolen maps and codes. Liam set a course for a distant system with many small planets. It was unclaimed and quiet, perfect for a fresh start. During the journey, Nara grew stronger. She practiced walking the ship's hulls and learned simple words from Tira's language. Tira showed her how to control the glowing symbols on her skin, teaching her that her power was a gift, not a curse. On afternoon, Liam sat with Nara and Tira in the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched before them like a shining river. Do you think we will ever go back? Nara asked softly. Liam took her hand. Maybe one day, but not until it is safe. Until no one can hurt you or anyone else like that again. Tira placed her hand over Liam's and Nara's. We make a promise to protect each other, to be a family. Nara smiled, her eyes bright. Family. Liam looked out at the stars, feeling hope fill his heart. The journey had been long and hard. They had faced fear, loss, and danger, but they had found each other. That was the greatest gift of Allah. As Ember moved steadily toward their new home, Liam whispered a quiet prayer to the stars for peace, for safety, for love in the future.